What a monumental day it was. 524 people from the diaspora, from people from the US, from Canada, from the Caribbean islands, from the UK, from so many different places, who have been wanting citizenship in Ghana, wanting to reconnect with their African heritage. People who have been displaced by no fault of their own through the transatlantic slave trade, which was the trafficking of humans. And these people have come to Ghana. They've made Ghana home. They've been doing business in Ghana, living and just thriving and wanting to make an impact in their own way. They've been providing jobs for people in the community, and they want to be citizens. And the president, by executive order, has done that for them.
Protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. So help me God. Congratulations.
For all my ancestors, I never even thought I would get this, so I know it's something special. I'm ready to do something with this. You heard? Shout out to everybody's out here adding value to Ghana and to the motherland. Thank you, administration. Thank you, Ghana.
All right. Welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, where we dive into the real-life experiences of visiting Africa, moving to the continent, investing in African ventures, and buying land, all with the ultimate goal of advancing Africa and restoring it to its rightful place on the world stage. If you guys have been following us for a while, you know our mission is to support an independent Africa and empower African people on the continent or in the diaspora. So whether you're currently in Africa, you've recently migrated to or from the continent, your ancestors were trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade, or you consider yourself a foundational Black American, this live stream is for you. I am Jo Hotogua. I'm the host of this live stream every week. I'm the founder of Authentic African, and each week I'll be sharing my experiences living, traveling, and investing on the continent of Africa. And from time to time, I'll also be interviewing people who have made the move to the continent and offering their insights and their stories. Today, we have a very special guest. She has been on the live stream, I think at least 3 times now. She's interviewed me, I've interviewed her, and it is the great and wonderful Ivy Prosper. She's a content creator and a producer. She's a creative storyteller with experience as a film producer, TV host, reporter, writer, and a public speaker. She relocated to Ghana from Canada to be on the pulse of what's happening in the emerging markets in Africa. And she makes content for those outside of the continent of Africa, seeking information on trends and what's happening on the ground level. So she's published an ebook. She has a huge following, very well respected, and she previously worked for Ghana Tourism Board on the Year of Return and Beyond the Return. And so we thought there would be no better person to add to this live stream than Ivy to tell the story of what happened recently and, kind of the full circle moment, having been there through all of the Beyond the Return and the return, the Year of Return festivities. So without further ado, here's Ivy. Ivy, what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. And I thank you for doing this. I know last week I reached out to you because I saw all of everybody talking about the citizenship ceremony. And I was like, you know what, Ivy, I have a lot of questions for you. I missed out myself. As you know, as everyone knows, I was living in Ghana for 2+ years. And Ivy and I met on a number of occasions. And I know that Ivy has been heavily involved for quite some time. She just recently mentioned to me over 5.5 years working with the Tourism Authority of Ghana. So she's seen this thing come to fruition. She's been a big part of it. And so, Ivy, I really thank you for taking the time because I have a lot of questions and I'm sure the audience wants to know what happened, how did it happen, all of those things, and what it was like to be in the room for that ceremony, that video that I played there, and what it must be like for you as a proud Ghanaian. So, but before we get into all of that, is there anything that I missed in my intro about you, what you're up to, that you want to share with the audience here today?
You summed it up a lot. I am, content creator. I am going all in on my YouTube channel more and more now that I have departed from my role with Ghana Tourism Authority, Beyond the Return, Year of Return. And I'm doing some consulting. There's people who are seeking advice and information on moving to Ghana or travel to Ghana. And I do consultations. There is a fee for the consultation. And then I have my book, which you mentioned, that is available on Amazon, Your Essential Guide on Moving to Ghana. And I'm working on updating that to a new version, because that one was published in 2019. And I'm also working on doing a lot more work in the film space, the documentary film production space. I recently had a segment that I worked on with ITV News that was about the diaspora who've moved to Ghana, especially people who were inspired by the Year of Return. That aired a few weeks ago with ITV News on assignment. And there's another short news story I did with them that will be coming out soon as well. And then there's others I've been doing some conversations with, having some conversations with other production companies, other news around the world who are reaching out to me. So things aren't finalized with everyone yet, but conversations are happening. So I'm really excited about what's to come.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to following your journey as you make some of these transitions. You and I have had a couple of conversations offline, and this content creation journey is not easy. And
at all. People think it's easy. It is not. People watch their favorite creators online and they think it's just as simple as you turn on the camera and you're just like, and you go, and it's easy. And it is not an easy thing. You have to love it, because that's what's going to keep you going. If you didn't love it, you would easily quit. And most people who decide that they want to do YouTube channels, you see that they start, and then they fizzle out because they realize it's not as easy as they think it is. They assume that everyone is making making lots of money. And it's like, you could be doing videos and you look at the end of the month and you're like, that's all I'm getting after all that work I put into it? That's it? This is like pennies, So you really have to love what you're doing, and you're really building a community, and you're also building yourself as an authority in whatever topic it is that you have discussions on, and you become a thought leader, and it can help you in other ways, other things that you're doing as well, because it all comes together. So you can't be doing it only because you're like, I'm going to do YouTube because I'm going to be a millionaire. I want to do this. It's like, most people are not millionaires. I read recently that only 8% of people on YouTube are actually making a good income.
Yeah, and I can second that notion as someone who's been on YouTube for just over 3 years. And at the end of the month, I'm like, man, there's a whole lot of month at the end of that check, and not a lot of check at the end of the month. Anyway, no, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, because this conversation is really about the 524 individuals who got citizenship in Ghana. So I just want to read a little something and get your thoughts on that. And you can add some thoughts to this, and I have a bunch of questions for you. So and by the way, folks, if you're watching wherever you're watching from, if you're watching from Ivy's YouTube, you're watching from my YouTube, if you're watching on Instagram, if you have any questions, or if you're watching on TikTok, if you have any questions for Ivy, let me know, and we will ask her these questions. But basically, in essence, a historic citizenship ceremony took place in Ghana on the 19th of November, so just about 6 days ago at the point in which we're doing this live stream, where 524 members of the African diaspora were granted Ghanaian citizenship. The event was held at the Accra International Conference Center and was presided over by the President of Ghana. The ceremony is part of the Beyond the Return program, which was launched in 2019 to mark 400 years since the first African was taken to America. This initiative aims to reconnect Ghana with its shared heritage and strengthen diaspora engagement. During the ceremony, the president of Ghana welcomed new citizens and emphasized the importance of unity, tolerance, and common goals. He encouraged them to contribute their experiences and expertise to Ghana's development. He also highlighted the significance of the event in healing historical wounds and reunifying Africans on the continent with their diaspora counterparts. So the new citizens come from a diverse set of backgrounds and are expected to bring valuable skills in areas such as education, healthcare, technology, and the arts. So this naturalization process is seen as a step towards strengthening ties between Ghana and the global African family, while also promoting investments and collaborations. That was a lot there. But I want to start with this. During the year of return, right? You and I had spoken about this. There were some citizenship was given. I think half of the amount of people that I think initially they anticipated, I think got citizenship during that 2019. And I will have to say, just for everybody watching, it's crazy to think that how one person's actions can have such an impact on so many people. Because there's a video that Ivy filmed that was a video that me and my friends saw in Sierra Leone that said we want to go to Ghana next year in 2019. This was 2018 when we saw the video. 2019, we said we wanted to go. And a year later, I moved to Ghana, right? And that was long before I knew Ivy filmed the video, before I knew who Ivy was. But those actions really led to someone like myself and many other people making the move. So I just want to put that out there. But Ivy, for you, as someone who worked for the Ghana Tourism Authority for the years that you did, 5.5 years, you were there during the planning of the year of return and throughout the beyond the return. What does this feel like for you? Does this feel like a culmination of all that work? What are your thoughts? And I guess what were your feelings that day when all of these people got their citizenship?
So first, I want to say that I wasn't there for the planning of the year of return.
Okay, fair.
When I joined the team, the year of return had already officially started. Okay. But I had already been promoting the year of return before I even joined the team officially. I just wanted to make that clear. So your question was, how did it feel?
Yes.
How during the 2019 year of return, 126 people were granted citizenship. And that was even like phenomenal. It was like, wow, just to see this number of people. And that was done at Jubilee House. Right. And to see the number of people, and some of those people had been waiting for a long time. Some of them, they weren't people who just came to Ghana. Right. Some of them were people who had been living in the country for a few years, applied for residency, and had been anxiously waiting. And so to see that number, and then again in 2022, there was a group of people who got citizenship as well. I don't remember the exact number, who also got citizenship in 2022. And then now this 2024 group, this is the biggest group. This is the biggest. This is historic. Mm-hmm. And the way I felt was like when I was talking to Diaspora Affairs at the Office of the President, when I was talking to them in August, when they were talking about the process happening, that it was going to be coming soon, the new batch of citizens. And they said that they were anticipating at that time, they said it was like going to be around 250 or something, but then the number kept growing. And then they said it was going to be over 500 people. Mm. And it was just like, whoa, that many? And I know that they had to go through an interview process. So one of the things that I want to make sure that people realize is a lot of times media sensationalizing, people just say things anyway, anyhow. And I see stories that say free citizenship in Ghana. Ghana's giving free citizenship. And it's like, they're making it sound like they're just handing them out to everybody walking down the street. But you had to be committed to Ghana. You had to be living in Ghana. You had to have been doing something. You've had to have gotten your residency, or whether it's a work permit or something. You had to have proven that you've been laying down a foundation of doing something in the country, not just you just arrived and you want to get it. It wasn't like that. I just want everybody to be clear. A lot of these people are people who are passionate about Africa. They're passionate about Ghana. You know, a lot of them came, you know, some of them came in 2019, some came 2020. So people came, you know, different years people came. Most of them had been in Ghana at least a couple of years, most of these people. That's why, Jo, you would have definitely been one of the people if you were here. So a lot of these people, they've been here and they've been putting in the hustle and the grind, and they've been wanting to get citizenship. They've built a relationship with the Diaspora Affairs Office. You know, some of them had come to the Beyond the Return office and asked questions on how to get citizenship and those things. So it felt really amazing. Because some of these people are people I've become friends with over the years. And just to see the looks on their faces and the joy that they felt, knowing that it was like, for a lot of them said they felt like it was their ancestors' wildest dreams for them to be coming back home. You know, a lot of them were like, they never in their wildest dreams ever imagined that they would have a document saying that they're an African. You know, they're from Ghana, they're from West Africa. And there's a huge significance for that. You know, the irony is you have Ghanaians who are like, I want their passport. Why do they want to be Ghanaian? And it's because they don't understand the history, really. They don't understand the truth of the matter of why these people want to be acknowledged as being from an African country. And it also, for them, it's a huge responsibility because it helps them to do some of the things that they want to do to help better the country. And it's easier to do some of these things if you're actually a citizen, you know? So doing business is easier when you're a citizen. And if you're doing business, it means you can hire local Ghanaians as well. So there's a huge benefit in becoming a citizen. But the room felt electric. It was like when people, they're waving their Ghana flags, they're screaming, they're shouting. Some people were crying. You know, it was just like this huge family reunion of people. I felt like I wanted to cry. I was like, oh my God, this is just unbelievable. I would have never in my life imagined this, especially as the Ghanaian girl who left Ghana as a 2-year-old to Canada, living in Canada most of my life, and being in an environment where being African wasn't cool and people made fun of Africans. And then to have this full circle moment of people who made fun of Africans now embracing Africa and wanting to be African and coming to Africa, coming to Ghana and calling it home. So it was like this huge emotional full circle moment for me too, just to see that, you know, at the place I come from, that people used to not want to be associated with, now they want to be a part of it, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say, I mean, it feels electric watching it through the screen. I can't imagine what it must have been like to be there in person. You know, as someone who was hoping to one day have Ghanaian citizenship, I am a dual citizen currently between Sierra Leone and the United States. But I was looking at Ghana as an adopted home because I did live there for a couple of years, and I did gain an affinity for the country. Unfortunately, things didn't work out so that I could be there for this time frame. But you know, I will be back in Ghana in December, so I will be there in person.
So you're coming in December?
I am, yes. So I will be there as a Sierra Leonean citizen, unfortunately, not as a Ghanaian one. But that's in December, so I'll be there for that. So you know, but I do want to take it back because you mentioned something that was really important, and there was some time where there's all these lists that people put out. These are the 10 countries that are offering citizenship to Black Americans.
Yes, I've seen those. Yes, I've seen those lists.
All these lists, right? Sierra Leone, by the way, is never on that list, which is funny, right? Because I think Sierra Leone's the only country in Africa that offers it by
DNA.
By DNA. And they do about 100 a year, right? So I think in total, the number they've done since they've instituted this right around reaches what Ghana has done in these 3 different ones, especially considering they did 524 in this one.
Yeah, this is huge.
That's huge. 500 plus people in 1 year is I mean, that's huge. But I want to ask you about the process as you know it. So, for Sierra Leonean citizenship, for people who are out there who, do African ancestry and you find out you're of Sierra Leonean descent, there's a process in which you can go through to go to Sierra Leone. And it is a much smaller and shorter, different kind of process than what you saw with Ghana, but you can get your citizenship. Folks like Jay Cameron, folks like Dynast, right? There are a few people out there who are big proponents of people coming to the continent of Africa who've gone through this process, which allows them to travel around West Africa a lot easier, right? When you have your ECOWAS passport, you can travel around West Africa more easily without having to get a visa, et cetera, et cetera. What does that process look like for these folks? Like, I know you mentioned they had to go through an interview process. Did you talk to any folks about what that was like for them, what they had to do in order to get the citizenship, and how long the process was?
People didn't really go into a lot of detail with me on that day.
Okay.
I do know some people who did go through the process who had mentioned that they had to already have residency, and then they also had to go in for an interview. So they did interviews where they had meetings with Ghana Immigration, with the Ministry of Interior, with Diaspora Affairs, and then they also had to do a police background check. So they had to go to the police headquarters and do a background check that they would have to pass before they could get the citizenship. So I know that there are people who didn't get it. So people think so. That's why when I see those news stories that say free citizenship, Ghana's giving free citizenship, it's like there's people who didn't get it. There's people who applied and didn't get it because for whatever reason, there's things about their application process that they didn't fulfill everything that was needed, and then they didn't get it. So there are people who were rejected. I don't know how many, but I know there's people who were rejected that didn't get it. So. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, I would imagine, there was I think, I don't know who it was, but there's a famous quote. I think it was Marcus Garvey. And there's a quote that I'm going to butcher, so I don't want to mess it up, but you get the gist of it. And he said, I don't want all people. It's kind of like the right people, right? And so I guess, I'm not going to say this necessarily had to do with the right or the wrong people, but you do have to have some sort of sifting process, right? If, especially where the demand is so high. With a country like Ghana, so many people want to get citizenship. So you do have to have some kind of vetting process. And I know there are some less than desirable folks who try to make their way into Ghana from other parts of the world. And sometimes, some governments, wherever they are in the world, wouldn't want to give those folks citizenship. So I understand that. Okay, so taking it back to your time working at the office of at the what is it, the
Beyond the Return?
The Beyond the Return. So we know that this was instituted by the current president, who is in his final term. He's about to be coming out of office. What do you think? I mean, I think about people talk about former Ghanaian presidents, right? They talk about Rawlings. When I first came to Ghana, it was his funeral, and his body was out for days, where people would walk around and pay their respect. And you have different people who have different opinions about him, but in the history, right, the way people talk about it is generally glowingly. Most of the people I hear. Same thing with Kwame Nkrumah, right? Where maybe some people you talk to, they say at some elements the economy wasn't so great, but other people most people say great things about him. I know that there are people from opposing parties to the current administration that's in place, but do you think that this will be his legacy in the long run? This whole year of return, beyond the return, and giving citizenship. Do you feel like this would be his legacy in the long term?
Yes, definitely. I definitely think this is a legacy. He's going out with a bang.
Yeah.
Like, this is his last term, and he has done something that no one else has done in this country, and even throughout Africa. It's not something you've seen done. And so he set a huge precedent.
Yep.
And he has shown Ghana's he's shown Ghana's history in one moment, because Ghana has historically been known as a Pan-African nation.
Right.
You know, since its inception with the first president, Kwame Nkrumah, who he had gone to school in the US, came back to Ghana and saw the need to connect the diaspora with Africa and his wanting to unite Africa. So from his beginnings of inviting people to come, and at the time there were diaspora people who were, you know, heeding the call and coming during his time. And then, you know, since then, we've seen people always connecting with Ghana as the place to go and feel a sense of home when you're coming to Africa. Then we saw like Panafest was one of the biggest, the first big festivals in Africa that was in Ghana, and inviting the diaspora to come. That was, I think, 1991 or 1992. That was a huge festival that the diaspora would come to Ghana for and come and feel the connection. And then in 2007, the Joseph Project, which was done by that government to invite the diaspora as well. The Joseph Project was done as a symbolic, sort of like with the Bible, with Joseph, who had been, you know, outcast and then came back as like the prodigal son to return. I believe that's how the story was. And it's similar to that. It's supposed to be like the diaspora are the, you know, the brothers who are coming back. And then fast forward to the year of return, 2019. And I'm getting a call on my phone and I can't turn it off.
No worries.
And so fast forward to 2019, and then with the year of return, inviting the diaspora and marking that 400-year anniversary of the first documented ship of enslaved Africans to arrive in Virginia. But I'll backtrack that just before 2019, during Mahama's presidency in 2016, he also had given citizenship to some diaspora. I think it was like 30, maybe 30 something people. So it was a small group of people. It's like 30 something people that he had given citizenship to as well in 2016. Yeah, I think it was 2016. And so then 2019, with the year of return, it was a huge ceremony. And then in 2022, it was also another big ceremony. But the president wasn't at the one in 2022. There were other government officials who were there. And then this one, I mean, but it was still him who conferred the citizenship. So what I want to say too is, with this being part of his legacy, going back to your question about this being part of his legacy, because getting citizenship in Ghana usually takes a long time. It can take 8 to 10 years to get citizenship in Ghana for anyone. But with this is done by presidential executive order, which means the president supersedes the normal process of it taking the 8 to 10 years or more. So he signs off on it being approved based on the processes of the people living there, getting their residency, you know, proving who they are, proving their commitment to the country, passing the background checks, those kinds of things. And then he, by a presidential executive order, signed off on it. So in this huge, massive legacy of his that he has done, it is something that will never be forgotten. It goes down in the history books. And nobody can change that. Nobody can change that. People who complain about him, because in Ghana we have the, you know, people who are complaining about him, they don't like him. Then there's people who love him. So there's, you know, you have the two sides, but nobody can deny the impact that he has had when it comes to these campaigns and making the diaspora really feel like Ghana is home.
Yeah, good point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying nobody can change that.
At all. Nobody can change that. And I think it's important to highlight that because, as you said, yeah, I mean, you know, obviously everybody has their political parties like any country, you know. For those of you who haven't been to the continent, if you in America are in a household and you hear people talking about politics all the time, it is the same thing in Ghana. Any country you go to, okay? When I was in Ghana, especially when I was talking to Ghanaians, there were people on both sides of the political aisle, and there were lots of conversations about the current administration, the former administration, this and that, et cetera, et cetera. But this legacy, I wanted to mention that, and I did want to preface it the way I did before I asked you that, because I do know that there are people who oppose the current government. Fine. But yeah, as you said, this is a legacy that will live beyond his years. And as you said, I think it's important to note to people that Ghana has always led the way in terms of that return to the continent. As you mentioned, so I went to the Kwame Nkrumah Museum before it was remodeled, the old one. And in that museum, they had all these pictures of all the people who had come to Ghana: Muhammad Ali, Maya Angelou, Nina Simone, W.E.B. Du Bois, like all these people who were known as revolutionaries in America and in America's civil rights movement in different ways. Maybe it's in the arts and sciences, etc. And they all came to Ghana. Then, of course, the Black Star Line and all the different things that were happening at that time. And so it's amazing to see another moment like this. One question that came up as you were talking about citizenship is the Homeland Return Act. If I remember correctly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the act that was supposed to speed up the process to get citizenship, right? Where it wouldn't have to be done through executive order. Do we know if there's anything that's going on with this particular act? Have they given any updates as a government? Somebody asked this particular question.
Yeah, I saw the question. I honestly don't know if there's any updates on it. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would imagine no news means no news. So it's unlikely because as I was looking into getting citizenship in Ghana, I saw that it could take 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I did know some people who got citizenship in 2022. And that was through, one person who got citizenship in 2022. She had helped, I think, what was it, like 50 people buy land in Ghana, right? She had been working with the Diaspora Affairs Office. She had some friends who had some friends, right? And so that helped expedite her process, having only been in Ghana for 2 years at that point in time. And so there were some people who were able to expedite the process, others of which who had to go through the normal process. It takes some time. I mean, like with any country, right? Not any country is just going to start giving citizenship out to anybody, right? So I think people are always hoping that Ghana will just be different from other countries and just start letting people in. But like every country has their process, right, for letting people in. So anyway, we talked about the legacy. We talked about what it was like for you. I did, and then I guess we talked about even the history a little bit, of kind of people always coming back. I wanted to ask you about, what do you think this means for Ghana and maybe future presidents, right? Do you think this puts pressure on them to potentially continue to do something like this, right? Yeah, that's my question. What do you think about that?
I definitely think it puts pressure. It puts a spotlight on the next president continuing on with the diaspora relations.
Right.
So I believe that if Bawumia, the current vice president of Ghana, Vice President Bawumia, is running for president, for those who are watching and may not know, the current election for Ghana's next president, I think the election date is December 7th. And so the current vice president is running, and then the former president, Mahama, is also running. So I think that if Bawumia wins, I strongly believe he will carry on with what the current administration has done with respect to diaspora relations, since he's already within the government and has good relationships with the Diaspora Affairs Office. And I foresee that if he wins, it will continue. If Mahama wins, I don't know what will happen. For those watching that may not be familiar, in Ghana has a history of, in politics, when there's a new leader or a new government that comes into power, sometimes previous projects get shelved or delayed. So I don't know what will happen with the Beyond the Return initiative and with the Diaspora Affairs Office if Mahama was to win. But I also think that Mahama would, if he was to win, would be wise if he kept it going,
Right.
especially because he himself conferred citizenship on about 30 something number of people in 2016. So it would only make sense that he also continues with this legacy, because it can only get better for the country. One thing I can say is the Year of Return and the Beyond the Return initiatives have really helped to brand Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about branding the country. It has really helped to brand Ghana. Like, I know people who, when they travel to other countries, they're talking about how people know Ghana. And a lot of it has to do with the branding through tourism, through the initiatives of promoting people to come. People know about this country. And then because of people coming, and then there's high level people who come, celebrities who come, government officials who come, who CEOs of companies who come to Ghana, and then they're talking about it on their social platforms,
Right.
which is growing the brand even more. So I believe that whoever becomes the next leader of the country would be wise to keep it going, because it actually is something that has helped benefit the country.
Agreed, 100%. I am with you on that. I think it was like the best branding exercise that a country could do that I've seen in my lifetime. I've traveled to a bunch of different places that are big on tourism: Mexico, Jamaica, Europe, all over Europe. In no place besides Israel has anybody utilized this return home feature in the way that Ghana has, right? And like you said, it was great for branding. I mean, for me, the whole Year of Return, Beyond the Return, Year of Return was part of the reason why I ended up moving to Ghana, right? It was great for branding. I knew Ghana was there, right?
Yeah.
I had been going to Sierra Leone. I had never gone to Ghana, but this gave me a reason to go, right? And then once I got there, I was like, I could see myself living here. And then before you knew it, within 12 months, I was living in Ghana, and I was a resident of Ghana. On that note, somebody asked an important question, and I think it's an interesting one. And I wanted to actually pose it to you first before I answer the question, because it was actually posed to me.
Okay.
And somebody asked, Molly asked, Jo, why did you want Ghana citizenship when you have Sierra Leonean citizenship? So I think this could be used as an educational moment. What are some of the benefits of having citizenship in Ghana for those who want to know why someone like myself who has citizenship in another country would want to have citizenship in Ghana?
Well, when you're a citizen of a country, you have access to things like, for example, if you want to start a business in Ghana and you are not a citizen, I believe you have to have at least 500,000 US dollars in cash or assets to start a business when you are not a citizen of the country. And if you are a citizen of the country, you don't even need that. I think you need like 500 Ghana cities, which is like, what, 10, not even, it's like $5 or something, $5 or $6.
Right.
So there's a huge discrepancy in how you can start a business if you're a citizen or if you're not a citizen. Also, if you get land, Ghana does land leasing. Land as a non-citizen is 49 years lease, and land as a citizen is 99 years lease. So those are just a couple of examples of why someone would want to be a citizen. And also, if some people are really into politics and they want to vote, you can't vote if you're not a citizen of the country. So that's another thing. There are some things that are priced differently for citizens and non-citizens, but this just gives you an idea of why someone would want to be a citizen of a country versus not. Also, travel is also another reason why some people want to be a citizen of a country. When you get a passport for that country, if you get a Ghana passport, it's an ECOWAS passport, so it's for West Africa, which you have that already with Sierra Leone.
Sure.
But the West Africa one, it helps with traveling within West Africa. It also helps with certain countries. There's certain countries in Africa that having a West African passport is helpful for. Not all, but certain countries.
Yep.
Makes it a bit easier than if you're holding a passport from like the US or something. So there's a number of reasons. And some people at the end of the day, it might not even be about the other things. Sometimes it's just about the feeling like you are coming home. That homecoming feeling is a main reason why a lot of people who wanted it.
Yep. Absolutely, 100%. And so, yeah, I think, all those reasons except the ECOWAS passport would be reasons that I would want to get Ghanaian citizenship, right? So I would not be giving up my Sierra Leonean or my U.S. citizenship. As far as I understand, the United States allows unlimited numbers of citizenship beyond the U.S. It's what I hear. You can ask different people. My man Jay-Z said, I got 5 passports. I'm never going to jail, right? That's what he said in the song. So I don't know if that's true, but I do look it up from time to time, and they do say you can have unlimited number of passports. So why not? To everything you just mentioned. And it makes it a lot easier to go through internal systems within a country, right? If you want to buy land in a country, it's a little bit harder to do when you're not a citizen of that country. As you mentioned, if you want to start a business, now you can go through some underground processes, but that's not what you want to do because you can end up having it backfire on you. So you obviously want to be able to do it in a way that is in line with the country's rules and regulations. So so that is important. Now, there's a random question that came up and that I think might be interesting. I think I know the answer to this question, but since it came up, I thought I'd ask it. Can a citizen technically become president? I think I know the answer to this, but please, if you, I think it's the difference between a naturalized citizen and being born in the country, right?
So if you want to become a president, I think you have to, I don't know this 100%, but I know that if you want to be a government official in general, you would need to give up your citizenship of your other country. Yeah, because I remember there was a woman who gave up her position, or gave up her U.S. citizenship in order to take on a ministerial position in Ghana, and she had to give up her U.S. citizenship in order to do that, to maintain her only Ghana. So a lot of people who become citizens from other countries, they're not trying to become the president of the nation. Most people are not trying to become president of the nation. So it's not something that they're thinking about. It's very rare. Like I remember in the U.S., Arnold Schwarzenegger became the governor of California, but he said he knew he could never become president because he wasn't born in the United States.
Right.
Someone just commented that MPs are allowed to have dual citizenship. No MP are allowed to have dual citizenship. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to give up your citizenship in another country if you want to become a high-level government official. So I don't think you can be president unless you give up your citizenship in another country.
Right. Even if they allow it, if you're naturalized and not actually born there, because the reason why most countries do that, right? Just for those who are watching, think about this. If you're a country, you don't want to have the idea of someone having dual loyalty, but running one particular country, right? That's why you hear that used as a negative connotation for people who have dual citizenship already, especially if in America, you hear it all the time. That person has dual loyalty to that country. I don't want to say it because I don't want to get kicked off the platform, but there are countries that Americans have citizenship elsewhere, and there's these conversations about them having dual loyalty, right? And so no government would want to have someone who has one foot in and one foot out, right? So for example, if I wanted to become the ambassador to Sierra Leone, I would in America, as an American citizen, as a Sierra Leonean citizen, they would not ever allow that. I would either have to give up that citizenship, but they generally wouldn't allow it because they want you to have America's interests at heart when you're going over to Sierra Leone and being that particular, ambassador, right? So they don't want you to have another country's loyalty in mind. So it makes sense. I mean, whether you agree or disagree, as a country, that makes the most sense, to kind of handle it that way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so some other comments. Admin Bentley says that's true. In others to run in order to run government office, you have to give up your citizenship for another country. Kwame is asking about Joy News and mentioning that he feels like a bunch of other big outlets did not cover that day. I will say this, most of the coverage I saw from it did come from individuals with their phones, or maybe from the Office of Diaspora Affairs. I'm not really sure who took those videos. Is that what you've seen? I mean, you're on the ground there. I don't know if you've seen that with like Joy FM and some of the local outlets that are there. Were they covering this? Did you see news outlets there covering this story?
Yeah, I saw other news there.
Okay.
I saw other news outlets there.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw other news outlets there, but they tended to do it as just like a short segment that was on their newscast, and people might not see it because it was just a short segment on their newscast versus individual YouTube channels where people are, pumping out content, or the individuals who are sharing their own personal experiences. I think also the reporting that individuals were making was interesting. So the algorithm is going to push theirs more so, in my opinion.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the local news didn't pump a lot of stories the way that individuals did on their social media platforms. There were some short segments.
Got it. I love when the audience comes in with notes to help the discussion. So Kay Sugar says, according to Chapter 8, Article 62 of Ghana's Constitution, you must be a Ghanaian by birth and also be 40 years old with a sound mind and a few other things to become president of Ghana. So there you go. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. I figured it'd have to be by birth. Most countries do that. I don't know if you guys remember this. Wyclef tried to do it in Haiti and found out the hard way that because he was born in, I think, Newark, New Jersey, he was not able to become the president of Haiti. And he had already started his campaign. This is like maybe 15 years ago. But I remember hearing that and thinking, like, how did you not know that? But he didn't know that. And he found out during that process. So yeah, there's some speculation that on reasons why news outlets may not have covered it. Okay, who knows? I guess that could be a possibility. And you're right, though, Ivy, to think about it, right? When a news outlet is covering it, generally they're trying to come together with a story, and that doesn't always come across very well on social media. Whereas you can have a first-person view, you have a person's excitement in the room. They're doing a selfie video and then they're sharing a video of people in the room. That's a very different thing, and more people are going to like it, share it, comment on it, and then of course that I think shows up in your feeds. It was all over my feeds, everywhere. I was trying to look at BBC, Pigeon, and Insider Sub-Saharan Africa, and Joy, and all of those. And I did see it mentioned, as you mentioned, it did feel like a secondary story. And it's interesting. I don't know why it wasn't a headline story like the way it would be for, like, let's say a BET or something like that. But I also haven't seen many of the American news outlets covering it. But maybe, I think what happens a lot in American news when it pertains to Africa is it only gets covered if it becomes part of like the international discussion, right? If everybody's talking about it, then they'll talk about it. So yeah. It seems like Supreme had another question. Okay, so Supreme had an interesting question on this. I've heard this stated before. Let me first say, I don't know much about Liberia. I am 25% Liberian, Crow people from Liberia. Shout out to my Liberian family. But I've heard this comment before. So the framing of this question implies something, but I think we can still maybe answer the question, just understanding that the framing has an implication that I don't necessarily know to say I can agree with it. But Supreme is saying, I'm worried that African Americans will turn Ghana into another Liberia. I already hear there is segregation in Ghana with Ghanaians on one side and African Americans on another. Your thoughts, please.
First, I want to know what they mean by turning it into another Liberia. I don't understand. I want to know the context of that statement. But to say that they hear there's segregation in Ghana with Ghanaians on one side and AA on the other. So to use the word segregation has a negative connotation to it. It almost sounds as if it's an intentional segregation, which is what I think about when I think about like South Africa, when I think about apartheid, or I think about in the U.S. in the South when segregation was like clear, blacks here, whites here, or whites only, and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
What I find is human beings, and I say this because I have lived in 3 countries. So I've lived in Canada most of my life. I lived in the U.S. when I was doing school, and now I live in Ghana. And I've traveled to several countries around the world. And what I can say is human beings gravitate towards what is familiar and what is comfortable. So, for example, when my parents and their friends moved to Canada, they all decided to hang around with other Ghanaians because they felt comfortable around Ghanaian people because Ghanaian people understood them and they could have those comfortable conversations with Ghanaians. So you had them, you see these pockets of communities. You'll see this neighborhood where in this one apartment building, I remember this one apartment building was full of Ghanaians. And it's because one person moves in and someone else is coming. Oh, come to this building. Come in. I'll help you get a place in this apartment. Oh, come here. Come here. Oh, I know the landlord. I can help you get a place here. Next thing you know, the place is full of Ghanaians. And it's not an intentional segregation. It's I'm comfortable around people who understand me, people who speak my language, people who, if I want to have some shito, they're not going to make fun of me. So it's comfort, because you see that in Canada. You'll be like, one neighborhood, there's a lot of Chinese people. You go somewhere else, there's a lot of Greek people. You go somewhere else, there's a lot of Polish people. And it's because human beings naturally gravitate towards people that they are familiar with, they are comfortable around because they have similarities. So an African American comes to Ghana and they meet another African American. They feel like, oh, another African American, you understand me. Because that's the other thing. Sometimes Ghanaians think that African Americans, when they speak, they're like, oh, I'm not getting them. Ghanaians will say they're slanging. I don't understand what they're saying. Even me, when I speak English, Ghanaians will be like, why are you saying it with slang like that? You're slang. I don't get you. So sometimes human beings feel like, when I go home, please let me just be around people who I don't have to always work to make them understand me. I can just be, I can be free and be comfortable. So then what happens is an African American moves somewhere, then they tell their friends who come, hey, you should come and move into this neighborhood. Oh yeah, come to this area. Next thing you know, you find that there's a lot of them that may live in a certain community because they just feel comfortable. It's not because they're intentionally separating themselves from Ghanaians. It's because human beings naturally gravitate towards what is comfortable.
Yep.
Am I making sense?
100%.
So it's not that they're intentionally separating themselves. It's just comfort, and they do integrate. They go to events with Ghanaians, they meet Ghanaians, like they work with Ghanaian people, but sometimes you want to feel comfortable in certain situations. Sometimes you make a joke and a Ghanaian won't get your joke because they don't understand the context behind the joke, because they didn't live where you used to live, or, you know, there's just so many different things that comes into play. It's just like even somebody might move from Bolgatanga in the Upper East region of Ghana, and they come to Accra, then they find out someone else is from Bolgatanga. Hey, you're from Bolga, so am I. And then they speak their local language, because there's a local language they speak up there that they don't speak here. And then they'll be speaking their local language with each other because they feel comfortable. Human beings want to be comfortable. That's it.
Yeah, that's all great points. And just to further illustrate that point, I think it's important to think about most of you are in the United States, right? So in the US, in Miami, you have Little Havana, you have Little Haiti. There, in every major city around the United States, you have a Chinatown. You guys might have heard about the Haitians eating cats and dogs, right? In Springfield, Ohio. Right, that nonsense. But they're Haitians that were telling each other, let's come to this place. There are jobs here. We have it set up. You know, you're going to gravitate towards your people. I think you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head. I think when people see a separation in people, I think that has a lot more to do with gentrification. That's probably a better question to ask, maybe, or a different question to ask. Let me not say a better question, but a different question. Because what I saw was there was a little bit of a gentrification happening. And so unfortunately, when you do have a mass migration of folks who come to a place that tend to have a higher income than the people in that place currently, it does raise the rent, right? Supply and demand is just how it works. And so it raises the rent, raises the cost of purchase. And generally, the locals tend to have to move out to outer areas to be able to afford housing. Can
I address something that's in the comments? Can you put it on the screen? Provide triggers for evolution is talking about segregation in the US and South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes. So this person says segregation in the US and South Africa was based on the same logic of comfortability and familiarity to one's ethnic background. No, it was not. No, it was not. Segregation in the United States and apartheid in South Africa was white people who felt that they are better than Black people and that Black people are beneath them and that they don't deserve the same equalities. That is not the same thing at all.
And it was written into law, right? They made it law. And to further address that too, because that's a good point. Most people who are moving to the continent of Africa, you have to assume most of them are moving with the right intentions. It's different than those people that were taking over South Africa or taking over the United States, right? It's a very different system in which they were putting into place to oppress the indigenous people. So I guess because I think that's what Supreme was asking in terms of Liberia, is he felt like maybe that's what happened there. That is not what we see happening in Ghana. But so that's a good point. I'm glad you called that out. I think some people liked you preaching this. Preach, sister.
So go back to what. So I know I digressed. So let's go back to when you were talking about the gentrification.
Yes, gentrification. So I wanted to ask you about that because, like, okay. So for example, my housekeeper, 10 years ago, she lived closer to Accra. And one of the complaints that she did have is that she felt like all these people coming to Ghana, and by the way, it wasn't Black Americans. She was talking about the Indians, the Lebanese, the Chinese, Nigerians. She basically said everyone who's not Ghanaian, as they come here, they are raising the rents, and she had to move out further away. But on that topic of gentrification, is that something that concerns you? Is it something that you've seen? Have you ever heard about anyone trying to address that particular challenge?
Well, I remember seeing on another YouTube channel, I remember seeing Fred Dahe and Vanessa Camby did a video together where they were talking to some local Ghanaians about the gentrification and stuff. I think that it's something that happens around the world when you see, high rises coming up, you see, new developments, you see big corporations buying up properties and destroying them and then building up something else. It's a it's capitalism, really. And in Accra specifically, because I think it's more in Accra than anywhere else, because
Right.
other places are not rapidly developing the way that Greater Accra is.
Right.
I think it's an unfortunate situation. And yeah, it's not only because of the diaspora, because the diaspora themselves, some of them can't afford some of these places either, because some of these places are
From my experience. Sorry.
Yeah, some of these places are even like the diaspora even can't afford it. Some of them, some of these properties that are built. What I learned from some people is that some of them are like companies are buying them for like their workers. Like for example, people who work in like oil and gas or tech, the multinational companies, they may buy up a bunch of apartments in a building. And then when they have some of their workers coming from abroad, then they stay in these apartments. And so it's like a revolving door of people who come and go, who work for multinational companies. I've heard that there's a lot of that as well. But yeah, I think it's just capitalism, really. And it happens everywhere in the world, unfortunately. The poor are the ones who the poor and even middle class are the ones who suffer the repercussions of it.
Yeah, I mean, and Sheikh was agreeing with you, specifically happening in Sierra Leone. I mean, I live in Brooklyn. I'm back in BK, and I moved into this neighborhood 20 years ago. I know. It looked like I was born 20 years ago, right? I moved into this neighborhood, Flatbush, Lefferts Garden area of Brooklyn 20 years ago. And when I first moved in, people used to tell us like, hey man, don't take the elevator from the basement. They rob people on the elevator. And now the pink berries and the vegan restaurants and the brunch spots and the people of all different walks of life, let's say, who are here that weren't here at that time. Because as with any city, right, it becomes more expensive in one area and people start moving out to the outer skirts, right? It just always happens that way. And so to that point, I think for those of you who are thinking about investments, you know, it may be too expensive to buy in Accra right now for most people in terms of what their ability to buy would look like. As Ivy mentioned, many of these companies, these developers come from other places and they're able to find one or two companies that can fill all of their units, and those companies can afford to pay those prices. However, there are places in Tema and outside, you know, outside of Accra, there are people who are selling land, who are selling it for more affordable pricing. So if you want to invest in land, and this is not an investment seminar, but just so people who are thinking about things, I will say, I always recommend you buy right outside a major city, right? Whether it's the capital city or a major city in a stable country that has political stability, et cetera, et cetera. You know, there are countries on the continent of Africa where I wouldn't recommend investing to expect a return. But yeah, I think it's really important to know that there are certain areas of cities that become a part of the city. You know, I use the example of New York, where Bushwick, all of Bushwick used to be considered what we call the hood, right? And now parts of Bushwick are called East Williamsburg because Williamsburg is a popular neighborhood, right? Fort Greene wasn't always a nice neighborhood, but now you have $1 million Macy Projects is right across from $1 million apartment building. So you have these neighborhoods that they're going to gentrify, but the outskirts, the neighborhoods outside of those are places that are a little bit more affordable. And if you're thinking about how do I get involved in this process of people moving back, and how do I ensure that I am able to benefit from it in some way, shape, or form, I definitely recommend buying land if you can go through the processes and know who you need to talk to and all of that, right outside of a city. So for instance, East Legon Hills, which I know is very expensive right now, but if you would have bought in East Legon Hills 5 years ago, you'd be really, really happy with how much the value of your property has gone up. Ivy, you and I privately talked about someone you knew, I don't know if you want to call them out specifically, who had land in East Legon, right? And they bought land in East Legon at a time when East Legon was like a wasteland in terms of the way people saw it. Because that wasn't considered where most people were spending their time in Accra. And now the building that I worked for at Jumia was in East Legon, right? We had two buildings that we were renting space from people. So yeah, I don't know if you want to give me your thoughts on that. I mean, I don't want to make it all negative about gentrification. I think this is an opportunity as well.
But I think the other thing to look at too is, and someone in the comments had mentioned it, is that it's not only the people coming, but it's also the depreciation of the city that has caused a lot of issues with pricing. So a lot of people are pricing things in dollars in Ghana when you're not even supposed to be pricing things in dollars. According to the laws, you're not supposed to be pricing in dollars, but people are pricing in dollars. And I've heard developers say that it has a lot to do with the fact that they're importing some of these things, or some of the goods they're using are being bought in dollars. And if they do it in cities, they end up losing. So if they just price it in dollars, then it helps them keep things streamlined. But then things are expensive for the locals when the city is depreciating. Every time it depreciates, it's even more expensive for the local community. If you're importing, let's say you're importing cupboards for the kitchens or something, and then the expense, and this goes back to what people want, because we have things in this country that people could be using to make some of these things and try to do high standards, but marketing and branding and all that stuff has gotten people to believe that you always have to get things from abroad. So someone will be like, I want my tiles to be from Italy. I want my this to be from there. I want this to be from the UK. So the developer's like, well, that's what people want. So that's what we'll do. We'll ship in, the countertops from, Europe. We'll bring the tiles from this place. So it's like, it ends up keeping the prices up, because if you're importing it because that's what people want, the cost is going to be really high,
Right. Yeah, well put. I think that that's a super important point. And just to illustrate that, when I moved into the apartment, the only apartment I lived in full time while I was in Ghana, outside of the Airbnbs, they asked for their rent in dollars. And the rent was my rent was $600 a month. And it was in dollars, and it did not change. When I worked at Jumia paid us in Ghana cedis, and I just remember watching the inflation, right? The prices of the things that I was buying going up, and my salary was staying the same, right? And it just felt like, it was very difficult for me. And that's an important point in terms of business, right? So, as you mentioned, it is technically illegal for people to do that, but they do it anyway. It's the same challenge that Sierra Leone has. And I know this is a conversation about Ghana, but just to illustrate the point, Sierra Leone has the same issue. I know a company that did double the amount of sales, right, in terms of their product year over year, but they made half the revenue because they bought their product internationally and shipped it in dollars, and they sold it locally in leones. So you double your sales, but you make half the profit. And so that meant that they had to let go of a lot of people. And so this is something that I don't think people talk a lot about when they're talking about business on the continent. And so for those of you who are thinking about doing business on the continent and you're thinking about importing things from elsewhere, you are going to have to think about those things. My housekeeper, I was paying her $107 a month, right? Which at the time when I first got her was 700 cedis. By the time I left Ghana, that was around 1,400 cedis, right? So she got paid a different amount of cedis every month based on what the dollar rate to the Ghana cedi was. When I was helping her find a new placement, unfortunately, the people who I spoke to were like, we're going to pay her in cedis and we're going to pay her 700 cedis every month. And that's what it's going to be. And they decided they were never going to make that adjustment or make that change. Now, these were local Ghanaians who grew up in Ghana, lived in Ghana. And in their minds, they were like, yeah, I'm not doing anything based on the dollar. I'm from here and that's what I'm doing. And so, I tried to play my part and do what I could. Unfortunately, I feel bad for her because she, obviously, the same money that she was making buys her less. And it really is unfortunate, and it's a problem for people. And it's not just in Ghana or Sierra Leone. It's all over the continent. It's all over the world, right? Inflation is bad for everyone. Most currencies have had some kind of dip. I know there was a time where Ghana had 13 straight months of decreasing value in the Ghana cedi. I don't know if that's still going on. I haven't really been paying attention to it, but yeah, it was just in the time that I was there, it went from for every $1, it was 6 Ghana cedis. So when I left, for every $1, it was 15 Ghana cedis, right? So it more than halved, and that is a definite challenge. So that's a good point. The depreciation is a good point. Okay, Ivy is in Ghana, and it is 10:11 p.m. for Ivy right now. I want to give time for maybe one last question if we can get one in, and if not, Ivy, do you have any final thoughts on this whole thing, everything we talked about today, this process of citizenship, those who are watching, who are interested in coming to the continent, any final thoughts before we call this thing and bring it to a close?
I mean, I just think that if you want to come to Ghana, you should come. And I think that this is a moment in history. I still am on a high from that experience. It'll be a week tomorrow since those 524 people got citizenship. And I know that all of them are so ecstatic and so just over the moon about getting citizenship in Ghana and feeling like it's their birthright. And so I just want to say that this is really Ghanaian people. This is really a chance for you to see how much other people love your country, because there's a lot of Ghanaians who are hating on their country. But look at how many people love Ghana and see the potential in Ghana and want to do good for Ghana. I feel like if we all could do something for the country, we can make it go so much further. It is still a developing nation, so yes, it still has its challenges. It's not perfect, but it is a place that people perfectly call home, regardless of its imperfections. So I just want to say that I'm proud to have been a part of promoting the country through the work that I've done over the years. And I met so many people that day who told me that they came to Ghana because of me. They moved to Ghana because of me. They visited Ghana because of me. And so knowing that keeps me going, to know that the work that I've been doing has really had an impact on changing the narrative of Africa, changing people's views about choosing to visit or to live or to invest, because it's not for everyone to live, but you can come for vacation, you can come have a good time, you can invest in business. There's so many things that you can do that can make you feel connected to this country.
Well put. And I will say, and I think everyone should thank you for the work that you've done as part of that office. I know your official capacity was in social media, but you did so much more. And there was an outsized impact, right, from the work that you did. Most of the people that you guys seen as celebrities that came to Ghana, Ivy was a part of that process in some way, shape, or form. Most of what you've seen, I mean, everybody, Steve Harvey, AJ, I mean, so many people. I can't even think. Stevie Wonder. Yeah, that was another big one. All of this, Ivy was a big part of this process. And so I want to thank you for what you've done, because, you in some part had to do with me moving to the continent of Africa. And as you said, many people tell you that, and I didn't even know it was you until I started talking to you. I was like, oh, I did see that video. And that was like, all of it goes into making a decision, right? So yeah, and then, Ivy, I think you were a really important part of this process. And so I think it's important for those who are watching who don't know to know that. and also to go follow Ivy. So if you're not currently, she has such a great name. Ivy Prosper is her name on YouTube. So you could just search for Ivy Prosper. She's on Instagram as well as Ivy Prosper, and follow her journey as she has moved on from working on Beyond the Return, but she continues to tell the stories of folks on the continent. She recently did an interview with Jay Cameron, very powerful interview.
Yeah.
She's doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, I've seen all kinds of stuff. I was catching up on your content, some of the real estate stuff that you did with Maya, et cetera, et cetera. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you head over to Ivy Prosper, follow all the pages. And by the way, those of you who have joined from Ivy's side, you can come follow.
Oh, Joe, yes.
Authentic African is the platform. My goal is to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of this year. You don't know how much work went into this, people. It's so hard. It is so hard. But you know,
where are you at now?
I'm at 19,080 something.
That's so great.
Yeah. So and Ivy's been there from the beginning. By the way, okay, real quick. I know it's past time. It's, you know, it's like 10:16. But Ivy was the person who helped me first go live and do a live stream on YouTube. She was the one who showed me how to use Streamyard. I've said this before, but you know, Ivy spent some significant time with me, helping me understand how to use Streamyard. And then even while we were live, like, how do I put comments up on the screen and all of that kind of stuff. So I do want to say that, you know, we should give Ivy her flowers while she's here. And I want to thank you personally because, you know, you've helped me on my journey. I've been going live every single week since then. You were on my very first live stream, and I've gone live every single week except for 2 weeks. And I think that was back in.
I'm so proud of you for your consistency.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
phenomenal.
Thank you. It's not easy. And I think it was May of 2021 was the first time we went live. I think it was like United Airlines had just done the flight to Ghana. So that's just the date that was the time we went live. But yeah, how do you pronounce this name?
Kojo.
See?
Kojo.
See? I have a hard time.
Kojo.
Yes, I have a hard time with some of the Ghanaian names, and I always mess it up. So my apologies. But since we have a Ghanaian on the line, she can help me out. But yes, when I first started going live, when Ivy and I first did the live stream in May of 2021, I had about 1,000 subscribers, less than 1,000 subscribers. Yeah. So it has been a long and difficult journey. And so this is my weekly request to you all to help get more people on board in the journey to come along with us. I'll be back in Ghana this year. I'll be doing more interviews with folks in Ghana. Many of these folks who've gotten citizenship, I'm looking to try to get in touch with as many as possible to interview them on their experience, you know, how long they've been there, why they're there, what they're doing, what the experience has been like. And then also to, you know, more content while I'm there. I'm looking at some real estate as well. So you guys stay tuned for that. And then stay tuned to Ivy's channel because she's going to be talking about all things Africa on her platform. So with that, thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys all on the next video. Bye, guys.